This is Crysis Remastered. We're on Xbox Series X diving into the game. It's not optimized, but it's certainly actually running the game at a decent quality now. So when this launched on Xbox One X, it was basically broken. Two of the three modes did not work at all, and the other mode kind of barely ran, but had a lot of performance issues. So yeah, it was not a great experience in regards to this actually being my first time playing Crysis, like really playing it all the way through, and yeah, I was very, very disappointed. Anyways, like I was saying, two of the three modes didn't run well, so we've got three options here and we're going to show off each of them. So right now we're in the quality mode. So that's presenting a dynamic 4K resolution with a 1080p minimum, and it runs at like 30 FPS. Well, I think it actually perfectly hits the 30 at this point because it actually is kind of running smoothly. Then we get this thing called a performance mode. So that's an uncapped frame rate, apparently uncapped at a 1080p max resolution. So that's a little, the visual quality goes down, but the fluidity goes up significantly, which is good. And then finally we have a very fascinating sort of mode, and that's a ray tracing mode. And it's weird because when you look at the technology, I really didn't think that the consoles, the current generation, well, I guess it's still called next gen, but the Series X and stuff, I didn't expect that we would have ray tracing as an option this gen. I really didn't, and now we've got a few games that have it. So the fact that, I guess you could say this game in particular had ray tracing on last gen, it kind of snuck it in there. I find that ultimately to be quite fascinating. Oh, that is a lot of guys over there. I'm in this weird firefight that I've set up for myself, because I was filming this earlier, and then, yeah, we had some issues with the footage. Anyways, the ray tracing mode, it is a 1080p max at 30 FPS-ish. Again, with the thing being like actually running kind of decently well now, but like as you can see, like the visual quality and stuff like that, like it looks really good here. Definitely has a higher quality to it, and it's kind of fascinating because this game is sort of full of physics type things, I guess you could say, just in regards to the damage and stuff that can be done to the environment, things kind of falling apart and stuff like that. It's really, really quite interesting, at least I think so. Oh wow, that guy went flying. So we don't actually want to leave this area because there's like a whole minefield there. But what I'm trying to say is, like, it's really neat how this kind of environment sort of breaks apart and stuff like that. It's very, very cool. And it's also very demanding, and this always the big question was, can it run Crysis? And the Series X actually can handle this remastered version. So they did actually patch it on the One X. Like, it did start running, better. It was playable compared to being unplayable in the first kind of launch of it. But at the same time, it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't perfect, right? It really wasn't a great way to play the game, and that was disappointing. But I think at this point, we've shown off a little bit of an explosion stuff, we're going to switch over to the next mode. So you do that from the settings here, and then you're able to swap over to the three different options. Performance mode. So that's kind of interesting, because, in the past, it kind of made you restart the game. So that's neat that it can do this now in regards to kind of doing this quick swapping. So that's kind of interesting. Again, with a reminder being that this is supposed to increase the fluidity while lowering the, I guess you could say, the graphical quality of the overall experience by quite a bit, right? At the same time, it's kind of nice to have the improved fluidity, but I don't know if it really feels that much better. I mean, it definitely does, but is it worth it to have such a lower kind of quality? I don't know, it's really up to you when you go to play the game, right? That's entirely your choice of how you want to experience it. And yes, I know what the objective is. I'm specifically not really following it to do my thing with the big suit here. So we should also talk about what Crysis is. So this is the first game in the series. You're kind of like a bit of a a super soldier. You can tell that with the abilities I've been using. You got these cool suits, these expensive suits, you know, invis, they make you jump high, they make you move fast, and you know, you got the tougher shields you can kind of put up, and yeah, they're very fascinating suits. And your character, you're on this island, there's something going on with these Koreans, big mystery, and you're sort of finding out what exactly that mystery is. There's this whole extra unpredictable sort of backstory, so don't maybe read into it, just kind of witness that. It's a bit random, I guess you could say, when I really think about it, because I mean, I've known of Crysis for a long time and kind of what happens, so it's just kind of interesting to play through it and be like, oh, okay, because there's some you know, there's some neat reveals that kind of happen, and I don't want to spoil that. You're just sort of one bullet, jeez, you're unraveling this mystery, or you're trying to figure out what's going on here, and that's kind of the fun of the experience with the mystery, is just being like, oh, okay, cool. And you're just kind of dealing with that, and that's about as much as I want to talk about the story. It does have some, you know, interesting, I guess you could say, situations in regards to the setup and the different characters involved, because you're mostly just like kind of investing a bit of a kidnapping, and then stuff starts going weird, and you're wondering what's happening, and yeah, that's kind of the gist of what's going on in that regard. That's kind of neat. We're up here. So we actually came all the way over from down that road. So it's got a semi open world feeling to it, but it's a very linear sort of game in regards to the style of it. Like, it actually has specific levels to it that you work through and you play. So I think that's kind of interesting too, just in regards to switching up the different areas and everything and what happens. Oh wow, I was a bit surprised by those guys. I definitely did not see that coming. They definitely came out of nowhere. Oh good, we got a checkpoint, great. So we can actually go back and get some more chaos going on. Yep. Wow, that's actually a very far checkpoint to actually get sent back to. But that was also kind of the plan, so I could show off more of the actual chaos going on, and you could see how it's sort of running and handling certain things. And I love how you kind of have all these different approaches to the action. So you could take this area really however you want. Like, you've got the objective, you've got the goal, but you can move through it doing stealth, you know, firing away, whatever you want, right? I think that in itself is kind of really cool. And you just sort of have these options. It's like this beach area here. You go all the way around. There's different mines, different choke points, but you get the freedom of kind of picking, you know, where you want to end up. And oh yeah, if we do the ray tracing, we have to restart the levels, so we'll do that. So you get the, you know, the freedom of choice, and just kind of the openness of being like, hey, how do I want to tackle this situation? How do I want to go about doing it? And I think that in itself is kind of fun and rewarding, and a little bit different than a lot of the game designs we get today. I mean, some of them nowadays are more open in what you're doing, but I think at the time, just Crysis was kind of fascinating. So again, we're on the ray tracing now. You had to restart it, obviously, for that effect to come into play. So they do ray tracing a little bit different in order to make it actually something that works on the last gen consoles, just in terms of how it's like rendered and handled. So if you're not familiar with ray tracing, it's you know, it has to do with the lighting, shadows, and you know, it's supposed to be more like a perfect, I guess, realization of how light is handled. So it's kind of fascinating. But you're seeing how that's kind of performing here, and how that basically interacts and causes some mayhem. Do we have... sorry, that's not what I want. I want the rocket launcher for that thing. But yeah, so we obviously lose quite a bit of... Well, I mean, it's no different than getting the performance mode, but we lose the fidelity. And also we take a bit of a toll on the actual fluidity as well, because, you know, we want to get the ray tracing effort in here. So you get dropped down back to 30 FPS-ish. And also that 1080, which is kind of interesting. And it's not even like, I don't even think it's a full 1080, it's like 1080 max, so... You know, it's got elements where it can actually drop a little bit lower than 1080. I think it's like 900p is the threshold or something like that. Yeah, it's just interesting, the different mode options. And again, I'm hoping that I'm sort of showing off, you know, how it's running, so you get an idea of what this is like and the style of play that it provides. And I'm not really being like too intense about it. I'm just kind of casually going around here. Where is the machine gun ammo? The assault rifle ammo. I'm having the hardest time finding ammo for this. It's driving me nuts. And I'm just playing around with this one particular area. The levels do get a little crazier. Some of them were basically just like even unbearable after the patch. Like some of the more intense, like, I don't know what you'd describe it. There was like a night level with snipers, and that one was really, really bad. Even in, like, you know, the only mode that would really work at the beginning, I think, was the performance or maybe the quality mode. One of those two. Again, two of them were broken entirely. Like the screen was all messed up on them and stuff, and then they worked after the update. It was like, okay, this is kind of playable, but not to the degree that we're seeing here. Like this actually, you know, kind of plays as intentioned, I guess you could say. Oh geez, I am gonna get absolutely annihilated. But this is kind of what they, I suppose, they envisioned for the actual game to be running at. And this is one I've been meaning to show off for a little bit because, again, it's Crysis. The legacy of the series is kind of fascinating. And I would like to see what they're going to do with the apparent, you know, leaks in regards to there being maybe some additional entries in the series getting some sort of remasters, because I'd love to be able to whip through the different games to get the full scope of the story and everything like that. But none of them really have the same following and or, like, I guess you could say, cultural type relevance that this original Crysis has, just in terms of being like, you know, the game that's can it run Crysis? I mean, it's still something that's talked about, which is kind of wild, and I think that kind of gets renewed a bit with how this one sort of performs and runs, actually. And yes, again, I will mention this once more. I know the objectives inside this building for those that maybe feel like I'm like totally neglecting it, but I'm just mostly trying to talk about it, give you an idea of what Crysis Remastered is. But I hope you enjoyed this look at the game and kind of understand how it's running on the platform. And I'd say, yeah, this is a way you could play it and actually have a good time with it on the Series X, so that's nice.